on the agenda, which is the superintendent's report. He's just gone to shut the doors. So, just wait a second to back to that. I could have someone make a motion, or I guess not.
Mrs. Swerter?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mrs. Excel? Mr. Fry? Mrs. Rickman?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Member Perry had things he wanted to say in addition to the superintendent's report.
Well, first of all, thank you to Ms. Hosey and Mr. Simpola. They probably went on their way, hopefully taking their staff with them. I know how hard they worked to put this evening's presentation together for you, so hopefully they are recovering for the day of work tomorrow. I can't tell you just what a privilege it is to see and listen to all the creative things that our students are doing and the programs that are happening here at Mount Prospect School. So I just want to thank Ms. Hosey, Mr. Simpola, and the children and staff, and parents that helped to prepare that presentation. That was really wonderful and a great way to start the evening. I wanted to speak a little bit about our park testing schedule. There may be some of you here tonight to talk about parks. We have park on the agenda under board forum. We've been fortunate over the past few months to get to a lot of the state trainings and programs that the state has been running to help us to understand more about our new testing program. And one of the things that we've learned about includes the length of the time of the different units of the test, and also the fact that we can stack sections of the test given the amount of time that each of the sections of the test takes and the ability to stack the test. I asked the high school principal to see if he could come up with an alternative schedule that would in turn allow us to improve the middle school schedule. So without boring the board or the audience too much with the details that are complicated by the facilities and the number of machines that we have available to test the students with, I wanted to kind of summarize the basic idea of what we're putting forth as a new schedule that we should be able to distribute in the next week or two. So the main idea is to have the middle school test in the first couple periods of the day, the first 2 to 3 periods of the day, and then allow the students to get to class immediately after taking sections of the test they have to take. And the way that we would approach that is by having the 6th grade test in the first week. And while the 6th grade is testing, the 7th and 8th graders would also come to school on time and just go to class. And then the second week, the 7th graders would test first thing in the morning, and the 6th and 8th graders would go to their classes. And finally, in the third week, the 8th graders would test in the morning, and the 6th and 7th graders would go to class. So while an individual grade is testing, the rest of the grades go on about life, business as usual, which was always the intent at the elementary schools. So because of the fact that we were able to adjust the high school schedule so that we would not need to share computers between the high school and middle school, we were able to reschedule the middle school to have full days of school for all the students and not have any delayed openings. And the only time the students would be out of their regular classes is when they were testing. Those students that are testing, when they finish the testing in the morning periods, they'll have a rotation of some of their other periods for the balance of the school day. So we were really thrilled to be able to achieve that, not only because it restores instructional time, but it's also cheaper for the district to not have to run so many delayed opening bus runs. Because each time you add a run, there's a cost of doing that. So the way we were able to achieve that improvement at the middle school was by creating a new schedule for the high school, whereby we got permission to run a split schedule at the high school. So a split schedule basically means you're taking the student body and you're dividing it in half and asking each group of students to come to school on a different schedule. So the general idea, and Mr. Hallett is working on finalizing the exact details, but roughly speaking, we would have the 9th and 10th graders come to school first for 4 hours. Then we would bring in the 11th and 12th graders late, sometime around 10:15 or so. And then they would be in school for 4 hours from 10:15 until dismissal, which is important because you have to have 4 hours of school in order for the day to count. While the students are coming to school on these 4-hour shifts, they would be completing the requisite testing. But 4 hours is enough time that we can stack 2 sections of the test. So in the PBA, the performance-based assessment of the park, students have to take 5 sections of the test, typically. Well, they can complete 5 sections of the test in 3 days if we stack the test. So the freshmen and sophomores would take stacked tests for 3 days in the first shift from 7:30 to 11:30, and then they can get on the bus and they can go home. The juniors and seniors would come in around 10:15, and those students that have to test would take 2 sections of the test between 10:15 and 2:15, and then they can go home. By doing that, we can complete the whole PBA in just 3 days. Obviously, seniors aren't testing, and juniors are not always testing depending on their math schedule, so we have to come up with some filler things to do. And we'll do the best that we can to make those activities valuable for the students. However, we can get the PBA done in 3 days instead of 8 or 9 days. When we go to do the end-of-year assessment, by stacking the tests, we can get that done in 2 days instead of 5 days. So what's great about that is you get the entire testing protocol done in 5 days, which is typically what the disruption was when we would do the 11th grade test in years past. So there's a huge advantage to disrupting many fewer days of the schedule than we had originally planned when we had 13 delayed openings for the high school. So we're really excited that we were able to find out that we can do a more condensed job of testing the high school. We can get the testing completed and get back to a regular schedule in a much more timely fashion. And by being able to do that, we had 3 full weeks in the testing window that we could get the middle school testing accomplished. And that allowed us to test 1 grade per week, which is much more palatable because the other 2 grades can go about business as usual. The second thing I wanted to mention was with regard to the graduation requirement. There's been some discussion about what are the graduation requirements with respect to PART, and I did post the various NJDOE letters that explain what the graduation requirements were and what they weren't. And there was some confusion when those memos initially came out, which is why I posted both of them on our website for your reference, because in fact, the PART test is not a graduation requirement for the class of 2016, 2017, or 2018. The current graduating class of 2015 is still using the test that they took as juniors. So this year's seniors did have a graduation requirement, which was the 11th grade test that they took last year. But the PARC test itself, we are being told for the class of 2016, 2017, and 2018 is not a graduation requirement. It is a way of meeting the graduation requirement among several other ways of meeting the graduation requirement. So passing the PARCC test is one way to meet the graduation requirement out of several other ways. And I know that there was some confusion when this was being discussed with the students. This is a little bit hard to understand that there's lots of ways to meet your graduation requirement, the PARCC test being one of the ways to meet your graduation requirement. We have not been given any information beyond the class of 2018. That remains to be seen. If PARCC is still around, if it's going to be used as a graduation requirement, I don't know. But I can tell you that as a point of clarification, because the question came to myself and some board members, what is the graduation requirement? And we've talked about it in the past, but I wanted to reiterate it and clarify for some of the parents that may have heard from their students about graduation requirements for students in particular at the high school. The graduating class of 2015, 16, 17, and 18 does not have to pass the PARCC to graduate. It's one way of meeting the graduation requirement among several other measurements, including things like the SAT, the ACT. So I hope that clarifies those two issues.
Thank you, Mr. Markarian, and I'm very happy to hear the good news, not that I just heard it now, but about being able to condense the testing into less days at William and at Ridge and not have lots of delayed openings, and we will definitely need that more quality instructional time for that, so that's very good news. On the agenda, we are now up to item 9, which is public forum on agenda items. I just wanted to say a few things before we start. We have a lot of people here, and we want to get through our regular business agenda and have time for a board forum. So we're going to limit people to 3 minutes and ask that people just come up once. We don't respond when people come up for public comment. We have the opportunity to respond later if we choose to answer questions or make comments. So we're not just sitting here staring at you refusing to answer. That's the format of the meeting. So we won't be responding until after both of the public forums have happened. We'll be jotting down questions and notes while people are talking. And I think Mr. Syed is going to be the timer, so he'll give a little warning to you if you're getting to your 3 minutes. Okay, thank you. When you come up, can you please put your name and address on the clipboard and tell us who you are? Thank you.
I wanted to wait till everybody else was done first so that I could then add on, because I have a lot of things to say about the PARCC exam, and I think you've heard from me many times before. So it's very difficult for me to say a lot in 3 minutes, but this test, I've reiterated to numerous people that we kind of adopted it blindly. And I had requested back in October, I came to a meeting, I had handed resolutions out to the board that were passed by other towns. Now, as we come out here in February, there are a number of towns, there are hundreds of towns now that have all adopted resolutions. They can be seen at Save Our Schools, they can also be seen at opt-out of standardized testing in New Jersey. Milburn has one. I'm just going to mention the towns that are, very popular to us, but there are a number of towns that have come out and said that they would not have any type of punitive policy for students that refuse. I'm a little bit disappointed because we have asked for direction numerous times. We have not received any direction about how our school district is going to handle refusals. And I think that's probably one of the very big issues. I hope that that is going to be discussed. I understand that should not be discussed behind closed doors. It's a policy, and that's supposed to always be discussed in open forum, and I haven't heard it mentioned once since I brought it up. So I am concerned about that, because I think that parents all have, I think we would all agree, have a constitutional right to refuse the test. And I don't have time to go into all the reasons why I would recommend every parent in this district refuse the test, but I have to say that we need some direction from our board, and we need support. We look at you as all our elected officials. We look at you to support our children and do what is best for our children. And this park exam is not what's best for our children. There have been numerous educators who have spoken out against this with high qualifications. There is not anyone who is qualified on the park board who has an educational background to adopt this test that we took on blindly. I don't know who's taken the park exam online. I can tell you that I recently took it online. I had taken tests, and it's a lot different taking the test on paper than it is taking it online. I took one last night, which was 11th grade English. I thought I couldn't go wrong with that. I have a graduate degree. I went to very good colleges. I also went to law school. I think I know how to read pretty well. I'm a practicing attorney. I'm a certified civil trial attorney. I read for a living. I analyze things for a living. I don't want to tell you my score. I wouldn't even tell my daughter. I just said it was not very good. Okay? But I can tell you that when I took that exam, I'm also very good with computers. I know how to use interfaces. I know how to go between screens. I have 2 screens at home. I have 2 screens at my office. I am constantly on multiple screens. I know how to multitask on a computer. 2 questions in one section I couldn't even answer because I just went to try and go forward. I could not for the life of me get myself back to that one question to get back into the interface to answer it. And then we had people walking around helping us. Now, under the park rules, no one is allowed to speak during the test. The teachers are not allowed to go and help the children. I don't know how much everybody's read it, but there's a 23-page addendum that was just recently added by Pearson on its website to tell teachers how to troubleshoot issues that are going to occur while they're giving this test out. There are so many issues that I could cover that have problems with this test that is so developmentally inappropriate, and that's just in addition to its technology flaws. Like I said, the screen froze. I was at a conference center that had an amazing setup. The internet was already set up, everything was going great, okay? When I was at a question, it froze. Well, if no one else is gonna speak, then can I have a longer time period?
I think other people are going to be on.
Good, I hope so. Please, parents, ask questions. Go ahead.
State your name and address, please, because you forgot to do that at the beginning.
Don't throw darts. Lisa Reppo, 10th Century Court.
Thank you.
I'm Jennifer White. I was an elementary teacher for over 15 years before I became a parent. During the course of my teaching career, I furthered my own education with 2 master's degrees, one in reading and writing and learning disabilities, the other in educational leadership. I mention this to explain my knowledge of education. I'm not just a concerned parent. I'm a concerned educator with vast knowledge. I'm also not anti-testing. I believe tests are an important tool to use for assessment. I've administered standardized tests to my students and have done so without any questioning. But PARCC in its current state is not a good assessment tool, and if asked to administer it, I would refuse, much like I will be refusing for my children to take this test. One of the best parts of being a teacher is seeing the light in your students' eyes that spark when you know they have learned something new. Likewise, one of the best parts of being a parent to me is seeing the spark in my own children's eyes when they describe their day at school, all they have experienced, and to witness the joyfulness in school that the school has provided in learning. And I'm deeply saddened to say, I am seeing the light, that wonderful spark, less and less in my own children. And the reason why is PARCC. My children are feeling stressed and anxious. And let me add, they are bright, strong students, perfectly capable of performing well, and yet they are unhappy and feeling pressure. One example of the unhappiness relates to the rapid speed that the 4th grade math program must move to cover all the material by March. This has turned my once math-loving student into an I hate math student, and he's extremely capable. There are so many problems with this test, including it is developmentally inappropriate, has taken far too much time away from actual teaching in order to prep for the test, and is far too stressful for our children. As an educator, I know there is nothing that is positive about PARC in its current state. And as educators and administrators, you know that too. And yet I've heard statements such as, we don't know if it isn't a good test yet at these meetings. Well, yes, we do. All you had to do was discover it by taking a sample test on PARC Online yourself. There is so much information floating about PARC which is disturbing, and it is unconscionable. We're so close to the test to have unanswered questions. While it's supposed the Q&A has some information about PARC, it also has misinformation. For example, number 33 asks students if it will also be able to highlight and underline reading passages. The answer is yes. There's a built-in accessibility feature that allows students to do so. Yet you omitted in the response that most students have not been taught how to use this application. I have a 4th, 6th, and 8th grader who have not used Chromebooks once to learn how to navigate these tools. This test is not ready to be rolled out. Our children should not be guinea pigs for this experiment. A parallel, although extreme I can think of, is would you give your child a vaccine that has not been tested and studied in great depth? I doubt it. Parents have always had the right to refuse tests. Just like New Jersey asked, this is no different. It's every parent's right to refuse this test and expect there will not be any consequences, just as there have always been. The only difference is that now it isn't just a few of us. It is an
We're
mass.
going to have to stick to the 3 minutes.
You know, you asked us all.
You may not have heard the.
I did, but you know, you asked us all to turn out and to cut us off at 3 minutes. I probably have 1 minute less to get everything in. I don't think
You can
that
send
that's
us your
correct.
comments. You can send us your comments.
Good evening.
Your name and address,
My
please.
name is Laura Begg. I live at 15 Pitney Court, Basking Ridge. I want to also make sure that I welcome Mr. Vedran tonight. Thank you for being here. I very much appreciate that you are present this evening to hear from the parents in the field regarding our view of PARC testing. I wanted to state that I'm one of several parents from this district who have testified in Trenton at the State Board of Ed meeting recently, and also I submitted testimony for yesterday's meeting of the Study Commission on the use of student assessments, both times against PARC. I too am an educated parent. I have 3 children in Bernards Township schools, and I have long been a supporter of public education, of which I am a product. I wanted to first say a few things about the impact of PARC on us locally for your edification. Our district is a high-performing district, as measured by many inventories and in various validated ways. We do not need more standardized tests to tell us that. We benchmark against some other high-performing districts that use similar measures. Our administration is quite successful at incorporating the updates to curriculum which come over time and which are required by the state. We have talented teachers, and we all pay our taxes for our schools, just like everybody else in New Jersey. Yet despite all of this, we are being forced by the state to implement a testing protocol to measure our competency on Common Core. Common Core, a new curriculum which is not fully rolled out, not fully vetted, and not assessed for effectiveness. Rolling out PARC this rapidly as a measure of Common Core is proving to be a disaster. This standardized test has not been given due diligence or due notice over a period of years, has not been vetted or validated for effectiveness, is experimental at best, and adding it on top of an already unfinished curriculum rollout with its own problems is quite frankly irresponsible. PARC for us is not an easy implementation. As you know, we are in the position of receiving little in the way of state aid in a good year. For this state mandate known as PARC, we received no state funding and have spent close to $1 million in this past year alone for infrastructure development, expanded bandwidth, Chromebooks for students to use for the test, Pearson materials and training. This does not include the cost for substitute teachers when our teachers are learning how to administer the test, for cost for for annual grading, loss of parental work time due to shortened school days. Thank you very much for reworking the schedule. Student and teacher stress, and the immeasurable short and long-term costs of the lost instructional time. That isn't to say that we want to put ourselves in a position of having any state aid disbursement held over our heads because we dislike the testing protocol. Rather, it's for you and for those at the state level to ensure that our rights as parents and as a school district are preserved without bias. That's my first point. Do I have time for a second?
Timer does not.
Did it go off? Okay, I'll set my comments.
Hi, I'm Jen Warren, 23 Woodstone Road. I just want to say, nice try, but we all fall Jen. My problem is with Park and Common Core, of course, we all heard about that. I have a bigger problem with the lack of information that we as parents have gotten since Common Core was introduced in 2010. Now, I've had kids in the schools for 10 years. And I have many more years ago. So I went back and I looked through all the Friday folders. I couldn't really I can't go through every meeting you guys had. But it seems to me that if we're going to be introducing a whole new thing like this, we would get more information about it. And we did notice, in the grammar school, we did notice a change in the math and the language arts. And we didn't like it. And then when you guys gave us the presentation on the math was so bad, we weren't able to ask questions. We weren't able to do anything. And it was just like a rote, like this is what's happening. No reason why, no nothing. And then the language arts presentation was coming in like April. The year was over, who cares? We already noticed that our kids, half the stuff we like in our kids' language art program was cut out already anyway. So, and I have a hard time believing now that these tests are going to be used for anything, and we're going to get, from what I've been reading, it just seems like we're never going to get what they promised out of it. But the lack of information coming out of Trent and coming out of our own Board of Ed really was appalling and embarrassing to me. That I'm not an educator. I mean, I'm busy. I have elected officials to inform me about these changes and let me know what the impact it really is going to be on our town. And I'm a taxpayer, and I found that this unfunded mandate is forced down our throats, and then it's unconscionable that we're so close to this testing, and we still haven't heard anything definitive from you guys or from Trent regarding refusals or what the test really means to our kids this year. Like, what does it really mean? There's so much information, and no one knows. I'm so angry that all we have to work on, all we have to debate is innuendo and rumors regarding something as important as our kids' education. That's all we have to work on. I have to go on the internet myself to find out what is going on with my kids' education, and I find it to be wrong. I mean, all of us here, we're educated, we're involved, we're motivated, and we're supportive. We're parents and citizens. And we're not being given the respect or the answers that we really deserve when it comes to our kids' education. And I really think that's enough. I'm kind of sick. Thank you.
Hi, Lisa Winter. I was at South Maple Avenue in Basking Ridge. I want to welcome you here. I'm really happy that you came. I think that's wonderful. So we really appreciate it. I don't think 3 minutes is enough for everybody. I'm a little frustrated at that. I just want to say, I think one thing I wanted to say to you is something you probably already know, which is this is really a wonderful school district. And we're very proud of it. It has very good quality. I have 3 children, 2 in college and 1 still in high school, who've gotten an incredible education here, and I'm very grateful to have lived here. So I love my schools. What I want to talk about regarding the park is I share those feelings about the park being really utterly experimental. There's been no field testing, there's been no validity tests on the test. We're doing an experiment on our kids. So I have so many concerns about the test itself, but what I want to talk about quickly is my overarching concern, which is the high-stakes nature of PARC, of how we're using it. We're using it to evaluate teachers, which means that teachers can be fired if their students don't get good PARC scores. It's really important to remember. So we're telling teachers that this is how we're evaluating them. This year it's only 10%, but it's going to move up to 30 and maybe 50%. It's going to be 50% in New York based on these test scores, these experimental test scores. So what's a teacher to do? They're going to have to teach to the test. They have no choice. I don't blame them one bit. I came across a great quote, and it says, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. This is called Goodhart's Law, created by a banker. And I think that's what the problem is. My overarching concern is teaching to the test. And I don't think it's actually a very good test, so it's even more of a horror. But I don't care how good a standardized test is. I don't want teachers teaching to it. We have a rich, wonderful curriculum. I think about all the amazing projects my kids do. The Colonial Project in 4th grade, where they did presentations to parents, and they dressed in garb, and they showed parents, and I was so struck by these 9-year-olds speaking to me, a stranger, with such poise. Well, I'm sure that's not tested on a standardized test, so that's bound to disappear, because all we now have to deal with is what can be tested on a computer-graded test. So I'm incredibly concerned about the use of this value-added method. I'm shocked and appalled the whole country seems to be engaged in it. The American Statistical Association came out with a statement that said it's an inappropriate use of statistics to use this growth measure to evaluate teachers. There's a wonderful statement that they made. One thing they pointed out is most of these value-added studies find that teachers account for 1% to 14% of the variability in student test scores. And we also know that the variability in standardized test scores is 70% of the variability is accounted for by poverty. So we're using these tests to evaluate every single teacher in New Jersey, and what are they supposed to do but teach to this test? They have no choice. So this whole premise. 3 minutes is not it.
Simon, I live in 90 Flag. I came here today to learn a little more about the PARC examination, and I was hoping that you know from the state some comments, which, although we had a concert earlier, we can get to Gary Robitas and what he has to say. And for that, I'm a little disappointed. But one issue that I want to address is my son is a middle school student, but he also has special needs. I want to understand from the board how you're going to implement the test on special needs students who are capable of testing, with a test that, for one, does not really address all their needs, because certainly certain children don't test well. And that can be in a great district or a bad district. It's irrelevant. But testing measures need to be done. Standards need to be done. However, when we look at the possibility of bringing these Chromebooks to children who are not able to work keyboards, who need extra time, who need a person to stand over them and give them understanding how to do things forward back, and you're adding stress and anxiety to a student who wants to participate in need be, but if the test is to be faulty, let them know the reasons for it. There are alternatives that I'd like to hear more about. Right now, Mr. McCarran, you mentioned that the testing years up through 2018. My son's graduated in 2020, so he's not even in the spectrum of whether the test is going to be valid or not or what. But the stress to the special needs students needs to be addressed, and I find out how we're going to implement it or not, or have alternatives. I think that's very much in I find that the adjustment of schedules is nice, but when you look at a senior or a college, a high school student, losing 12 hours of academic learning, because they're got split shifts 3 hours a week, that just seems excessive. And I think they can be learning more in the classroom with the class discussion than sitting in front of a computer taking a test. So I'd like you to please comment later, hopefully, about how you're going to address special needs students.
Good evening. I was not planning on speaking, I was planning on, sorry, Lori Dahlberg, 10 South Street. I was not planning on speaking this evening. I don't have anything written to say, but I can't sit there quiet. I am so appalled at these tests. I have a junior in high school. I've already refused the test. My daughter has already graduated, thank God, because as a special needs student, and the anxiety she had gone through, including taking her to therapy for her anxiety, would have sent her over the edge with these tests. I'm here listening to this, voicing my concerns because I'm concerned for every child that comes down the pike with this test. My son used to love math. Not necessarily liked school all that much, but he loved math. And about the same time the Common Core came into existence, he started hating math. He's gone from loving math and liking school okay, to hating math and hating school, to anxiety issues that have us at the doctors constantly trying to figure out how to fix it. And I know that he is not the only child out there. As far as the teachers are concerned, I think it's ridiculous that you're asking them to teach to this test. The hours that they spend with these kids, and like the woman before us talked about the spark in the kids' eyes, loving to see that when they come home, it's going to be gone. These teachers are so creative. They know how to teach. They've done an astounding job through the years with their ideas, with the curriculum, with the books, with the projects that fill out these wonderful ideas. And it's all being taken away. Teachers have no creativity any longer because they have to teach for this test that was created by non-educators. I don't want to see the spark go out of these kids' eyes. I don't want to see every child begin to hate school and not want to go. I don't want to see all these kids going into therapy because they can't take the anxiety from this. You know, our township has always been concerned about the race to nowhere, or the drug use, the alcohol abuse, the high stress in this township as it is, or was. You think that's not going to escalate as a result of this? You got another thing coming, because that's going to happen. I can foresee that. Thank you.
I also came here without planning to speak. I don't have anything prepared. I'm not going to make a comment about the park test. I'm going to make an observation. I think if you look both on that side of that table and this side of that table, we're all, for the most part, fairly well-educated individuals. Many of us have multiple degrees. Many of us have worked in many different countries. We speak many different languages. I think we're all fairly well capable of thinking outside of the box. And yet, I come here to this meeting, I expected something different. I expected a dialogue. I expected to hear pros and cons, advocates. I just have a question. Where are the advocates for this test? Where are the people? I simply can't understand. Not one person who's come up here has said anything positive about it. I'm looking in the news, the radio, the internet, for something positive about this. Because typically, there's always something positive. I can't find it. I don't know where it is, and I don't know if they know where it is, and quite frankly, I don't know if you know where it is. Where are the advocates? That's my question. I don't get it.
I just have a simple request. I would ask that each of you commit to actually taking sample part tests from each of the age levels, elementary school, middle school, and high school. Every time I see a sample test or a sample question, I marvel at how developmentally inappropriate it seems. So I just urge you, before you stand behind the test, you know what you're talking about. Thanks.
Is there anyone else for public comment?
Enrique Torre, 52 Liberty Ridge Road, So, I mean, I have had very little involvement with the school system other than having my two kids in it. It is my first time attending one of these meetings. I know very little about this test. I'm not very confident after hearing all this. But it seems to me that maybe there's a communication issue if we believe that the part test is positive. And so I don't know how much education of the public has been carried out on this test. little concerned. One of my kids has special needs, and so I don't know what are going to be the arrangements for her. I understand that the government is trying to increase the level of competencies, and I looked at some of the problems in the test. They're fairly complex, but you can work through them, but they're fairly complex. I'm a scientist, I'm a PhD scientist. So all I'm saying is that I believe that perhaps trying to move as fast as we are with this may not be in the best interest of the country and our state, and specifically our school district. Even if it's the right thing to do, there might be sort of a period to reconsider and re-educate. Again, just suggestions. I'm not sure, but typically ramming things down people's throats is not the best way to do things. So, as a suggestion for a concerned citizen, perhaps all we have to do here is sort of come back, reassess, re-educate, and perhaps come back with, is this the right way to go here? Just a suggestion.
Hi, my name is Jane Clark. I live at 16 Corner Street. And my comments really are for the gentleman from the state. This is a state mandated test, so to all the parents in the room, it's not our school board that's mandating that this test be taken. It's really the state that's mandating it. And I think it's really important as parents that we would contact our state officials, whether it's the legislators, the governor, the education commissioner. They need to hear our voice, and they need to hear our voice from Burns Township, that perhaps our district should be exempt from this test because it is a very high-performing district. But I would urge you, there's letters that are on the Ridge PTO website, there's letters on Facebook, there's letters on Save Our Schools, there's people that you can talk to if you have an interest in writing to our state officials to convey your disappointment and frustration. I have taken the test at different levels, and I think it's extremely inappropriate for our students, for the kids in elementary school who are just learning how to type and don't know how to type, for students who've been used to having a paper test where they can look at the whole narrative at one time, where now they're forced to scroll down. I've looked at math questions where there's bullets that don't seem to have an A, B, C, or D, but or 1, 2, 3, or 4, but they're expected to respond to each of those bullets in the box below. And I believe that we as a community need to take action in writing to state officials. And as I said, on the PTO website at Ridge High School, there is a instruction sheet that has email addresses and instructions about how you can send a letter to our state officials. So I want to thank our school board. I do appreciate that they have looked at the schedule and tried to modify it, but I think we need to remember that the test is being mandated by the state and not by our school district. Thank you.
Hi, this is Arnie. I'm from Pine Cross Lane in Basking Ridge. I just wanted to urge the Board of Education that since we are already at a very high level as far as education is concerned, if we could, I understand it's a state level testing, but as a district, if we could approach the state and see if we could tweak it to better our students in our school. And even if this is a pilot stage, I would say that we should not take away NJRs, keep NJRs, and try to see if we can do these spark testing as a part of the school, so that the children are not being pressured so much. The children are going to be pressured, the parents are going to be pressured at the same time. So as the board members, you also have to understand what the children are going through. There's so many changes that have been coming through. There was Common Core, then there was the map testing, now there's the park testing. The state is going to keep pushing and putting a lot of things because we're trying to get to the, we're trying to get part of the other countries. But we have to understand what our strengths are as a district. And I would really urge for our board to think about what we can do for our students instead of just accepting what the state does on us. Thank you.
Is there anyone else with public comment?
Hi, my name is Nella. We're in the Summit Great Henswet in Baskin Ridge. The one thing that I'd like to ask from the board is really what happens to the kids when they refuse to take the test. I have two children in the Berners Township schools. One is a 5th grader and one is a 9th grader. They will both be refusing. Just so that you understand, and I appreciate the representative here from the state, I grew up in a Newark school system, so the fact that my children have been able to grow up here in the Berners Township school system and really see what a quality education is has mattered significantly to me. I think what's really important is that we have children that have always embraced school and really enjoyed every aspect of school. I have a 5th grader that has enjoyed math, has always done exceptionally well. Coming home, probably for the last 3 months now, really stressed out. Starting with the typing, starting with what happened when she missed 2 days of school because of the flu, and the fact that she was going to be behind in math. All of this anxiety is coming from PARCC testing. So if you don't think that this is having an impact on their day-to-day education, it is significantly having an impact. And these are kids that have really embraced and appreciated school. They know where mom grew up, and they know the school that I went to, and I have always had them embrace the fact that we are so fortunate to live in such a quality, exceptional school system, and I'm seeing it just being dismantled pretty much on a monthly basis. So I really wish that someone would recognize this and really appreciate what is happening. And I'd really like to know very soon where my children will be going when they refuse to take this test. So thank you.
My name is Long, sorry. My name is Kathleen Amalfitano, 15 Riverside Drive. I just wanted to state some facts. We were just checking some facts that I was curious about. I had my friend check U.S. News and World Report. We're voted number 177 in the nation as a school district. We're number 7 in the state of New Jersey. According to Forbes, Basking Ridge is the best of 25 towns to live in the country. We have the best bang for our buck for housing and education. I think there's something to be said about that. I don't think the PARCC testing is going to create that any longer, and that's a shame. I'm an educator myself. I have a son with an IEP, so I have a multitude of different concerns with this test. As an educator, My master's thesis was on Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence. Back in the 90s, his work was brilliant. It was groundbreaking. But no more. That's all gone away. 100 years of educational theory that has led up to this point is horrifying. I used to work in New York City. I did my training in Harlem. I worked in the inner cities of Baltimore. I've seen kids really struggle. And if those kids aren't going to be able to do it, and our kids aren't able to do it, I don't know whose kids can. We all know that education involves engaging. It involves the body, the mind, and the spirit to be there. And it also involves thinking and reflection. We have none of that with the park. So I implore you to actively do something about this for our community, for our kids, for our families. We have been coming out, speaking here, telling you how it's affecting our kids, the therapy, the anxiety, the misery that comes with the school. I don't even know why we choose to live in the best 25 towns, or even in the state of New Jersey at this point. It's a shame. It's disgusting and it's a shame. And I'm sorry that you have to be here to listen to all of this bad news, but we would like to try to find some solutions, and I think that should really be where we go from here, is to find solutions to this problem. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Julie Keating. I live at 139 Woods End. I'm going to pick up actually where Laura left off, and this is more towards Mr. Biedron, that we are not here to complain about how hard the test is for our children, or to leave you with misguided belief that my child deserves all A's in every endeavor. No, we are here to ask you to bring something back with you from Berners Township, the understanding that parents want the best quality education for their children. The best education does not come from a for-profit company deciding, without input from educators or child development specialists, what and how our children should be learning. The best education comes from teachers in the classroom being able to guide a curriculum and impart knowledge based on their expertise. It comes from engaging with students in a discussion of a topic at the level in which they are able to comprehend it. It is certainly not using poorly crafted tests which only serve to confuse students. Please take that back with you, and please do your best to effect a reversal of the park implementation. I'd also like to address the board and Mr. Markarian tonight by asking for your support and your action. Parents in our district, including me, and I think everyone in this room, are working hard every day to determine what course to take for our children regarding refusal. We wish to refuse the test and wish to do so knowing that it is our legal right, that our children will not be penalized for taking this action, that you will have an academic alternative for our children, or at least that you are making strides for this possibility that the teachers will be informed of and on the board regarding those students whose parents have refused for them, that the data regarding our child will not show any negative penalty or be shared irresponsibly. We want you to communicate clearly what parent protocol ought to be and allow teachers to be also privy to that information so that there is consistency in this message regarding that protocol. We want you to fully disclose the work that the board is doing to create a resolution, as we believe this work is required to be done in an open public session. It is unfair today that we are held in suspense on some key points which are district-driven. We'd like a resolution from you, as other districts have done, which is supportive of our children and their education. It has been confusing and unclear when teachers are not permitted to speak on the issue, or worse yet, when leaders in our district provide false and misleading information in absence of clarity and direction. We'd like answers, leadership support, and we need it now. I sincerely hope that your presentation following our comments will release a clear, useful, and supportive information for the parents of this district. Now, those of you who may know Laura and I, we haven't always seen eye to eye on this, so this says a lot about this about this problem that we are. And I picked up her speech to finish. Thank you.
Good evening. Kelly Esslinger, 96 Culberson Road. I'm a nervous public speaker, so excuse the tone of my voice. I wasn't intending to speak tonight, but I did want to get up and, inspired by some of the other people that have spoken, and talk about the fact that it breaks my heart to see my 5th grader come home from school in tears over the stress and nerves that she has, that her typing and test-taking skills aren't going to be up to task for the park exam. I'm not a parent who believes that everybody should get a trophy. I'm a parent who believes in supporting our educators, instilling in my children the fact that they're very lucky to have the education they receive in this district every day. And it frustrates me to have to undermine that experience and that message by standing up and saying my kids aren't going to take this test. I don't think it serves the message of support for their public education, for the teachers that are working so hard to give it to them, and that frustrates me. That being said, I'm very proud of the public support for those that are deciding not to take the test, that are not going to have their children take this test, and I hope that the other side of this is the message that our children are getting is that when you don't believe in something, it's your civic right and your civic responsibility to get up and try and make a difference. So if we're doing that and sending that example to our children, at least we have that going for us. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Dumpton. I live at 35 Carlisle Road across the street here. It's great to be back building. It's been a while since my kids were here. But unfortunately, the circumstances are listening to people who have kids in this age bracket who are clearly being negatively impacted by this test and the way it's driving the curriculum. So that's sad for me to see tonight. I think my issue is going to seem like small potatoes, given what I've heard. But I just wanted to point out for those who haven't really made this clear to everyone that the seniors are losing 5 days of school for this. I appreciate that you reduced it from 13 delayed openings, which is a logistical disaster for the district, but there's like no reason for them to come to school on those 5 days except to avoid having an absence. And since many of them in this district are preparing for APs, all 5 of these days come ahead of their AP date. And with our late start to the school in this district, we're already on a very rapid curriculum in the AP classes. It's zoom, zoom, zoom. So you're taking away a week of instruction prior to those tests, which arguably have a little more significance to their future in terms of accelerating their start in college. So I just wanted to mention from the perspective of someone who has a senior. And I actually am a former educator from Burns County, and prior to having kids. And I love the district so much that when I had my 4 daughters, I made sure I lived here. During my time as an educator, I went through a tremendous amount of training
differentiated instruction, which everybody is obsessed with. There's no time for any of that. And I want to know who's protecting our teachers from this monster test. They are being pulled out of our classrooms. Every time I talk to my not kindergarten, but I have kindergarten, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. Every time I talk to them, oh, we had a sub this afternoon. I talk to the teachers, they're being pulled out for park prep and training. And by the way, half the time, the technology is not even working for them during the park training. I don't know how you expect the kids to be able to do it. My girls are a mess. Until the moment I said to them, you don't even have to do this. You're not doing it. There's no way you're doing it. And they felt fine about it, okay? And I need to know, where are they going to be if they don't do it? I need to know the answers to that, and I need to know what you're doing for our teachers. Because it's miserable for them. Being pulled out of the classroom is miserable for everybody. Having their evaluations attached to this test is miserable for teachers. As a teacher, there are certain strengths that every teacher has. Everybody wants to be able to address the needs of every student. When it comes to class placement, I want to know how this is going to change class placement in next year. Because there are several things that are taken into consideration when you consider which kids are going to go in which class. You balance out academics, you balance out parent participation, you balance out behavior. Well, guess what? I might be a teacher who's really good with that kid that might be a little bit of a buster. And I have a gift for that, okay? Do you think I'm going to take or volunteer to want to have that kid who might need all of my attention when I know that my evaluation is going to be attached to whether or not that kid can take a test? I think it's just foolish. I think it's crazy. And what are you going to do? What's going to happen to now all the gifted programs? What's going to happen to the teacher who now has, which is happening now, a packed classroom of gifted students? Her evaluation is going to be sparkling. And you know, how are you going to balance this out for the teachers? How are you going to protect the teachers when they're the one that's standing up saying, I am willing to take those kids. I'm willing to take all of the kids that need me. I think it stinks. And I'm not going to make kids do it.
Good evening. My name is Debbie Moldovan. I'm at 14 Hickory Drive. I would like to simply read a list of districts that have passed resolutions regarding refusals without penalty. Bloomfield, Delran, Haddon Township, Milburn, Montville, Neptune Township, North Brunswick, Princeton, Robbinsville, Township of Union, Black Horse Pike Regional, Borden Regional, Brick Township, Wayner Regional, Byram Township, Clinton Township, Delta Regional High School District, East Hanover Township, East Windsor Regional, Elmwood Park, Evesham Township, Fairlawn, Frankfurt Township, Gloucester Township, Gloucester County Institute of Technology, Gloucester County Special Services School, Haddon Heights, Hillsborough, Little Egg Harbor, Livingston, Mawa Township, Manalapan English Town, Medford Lakes, Merchantville, Montville Township, Morris, Morris Hills Regional, Neptune, North Brunswick, Pembroke Township, Randolph, Roosevelt, Somerset Hills, Southern Regional, Stafford Township, Township of Ocean, Wall Township, Washington Borough, Washington Township, West Windsor, Queensborough, Woodbridge Township, and coming soon, Roxbury and Wayne. And there are more coming every day, and I hope we can add Berners Township to the list next. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
training to give this exam, and it just didn't seem right that in third grade he has to, spend his time learning typing basically to do this exam rather than do something else like playing or reading or math or, and how good he is at typing in third grade, I'm sure is not gonna, determine how successful he is later on in the career. So it just doesn't make any sense that kids as small as the age are gonna be kind of evaluated more on their typing and other skills rather than the basic features.
My name is Renee Marchetti, and I live at 44 Peterson Road in West Orange. I know there have been a few parents who talk about children with special needs. I have a child with special needs. Some of her major issues are fine and gross motor skill issues. Sitting in a chair can be hard for her on any given day, let alone taking a test that requires typing. I can't speak for all parents, but many parents that I know that have children with special needs, not only does this cause them a great deal of stress, but so much time in their school years this year has been, I'll say, wasted on preparing for this test. She has typing homework in addition to all of her other homework, and I actually think that typing is a good skill for her to try to learn. But she gets so frustrated with it because she just can't do it. There's been so many hours in the day of learning how to take the test on the computer. My daughter is behind in every subject off the bat. And now all of these additional stressors during the day and extra time is required to teach her how to take the test is taking away from the precious time that she should be learning basic math and language arts and things like that. So I'm very frustrated. I will likely not have her take the test for my third grader. But I'm really frustrated in the time lost. I mean, there's only 180 days of the school year. And wasting not only the time that the test is being given, but the time that they're spending every day, instead of her having time to do extra math problems or focus more with her in small groups in areas where she has deficits. She's spending time learning how to take a test. I know she's not going to do well on the test. I can tell you that today. I have seen her NJS results. I don't care personally about the results of those tests because I know what they're going to do before she takes them. I care about the time that she's using every day in school that she could be using to help her get to the place for an average student, the level of an average student. And it's really disheartening and just makes me sad that so much time is being spent on this. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Leslie Workman. I'm at Wellington Drive. And I just want to add my voice to the other voices of the parents. I'm very concerned about these tests. We have a wonderful community, we have wonderful schools, we have exceptional schools actually, and exceptional kids. And I haven't heard one positive comment about these tests tonight or in any of the research that I've done. So I simply want to add my voice to the rest of the voices that were lifted tonight and just ask you to support caution and what can be done to preserve our schools. We are a very high performance district, and I think it's important that we preserve that and consider our kids because that's why we're living here, and that's why our schools are so good. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen Cannon. I live at 4 Woodstone Road. I really haven't done my research, and one of the reasons I came here tonight was just to learn more about the park test. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but it sounds to me, just from what everyone is saying here, the test is worthless, and there are two jobs that need to be done. One is the members of this audience and the members of the community who are not on the board need to basically give their concerns over to Trenton and communicate that. And then the job for the Board of Education is to support the community and tell us what we need to do so that so we can either take our kids out so they don't have to take this test and inform us how we do that without letting our kids be penalized for it and put us on this list of all of these other districts who are saying that they're not going to stand for it. So if we're not going to stand for it, we're going to tell the people in Trenton, and you're not going to stand for it, you're going to support us.
Hi, I'm Sarah Benicia at 12 Honeyman Road. I thought it would be nice to speak to hear a student perspective on this. I'm a senior and I'm going to Northwestern next year for engineering, and I would really love It's sad to see a lot of teaching time being taken away for testing. And especially I think in this district, we already have so much testing, and I just think the time that's being sacrificed isn't worth it. And I know a lot of kids that are worried about this test because it's really hard. I've taken a look at it. It looks pretty hard to me. And I know there are younger kids that are worried because they don't know what to type when they have to take this test, and it just doesn't seem worth it for me. I would hate to see kids being upset because they feel like they don't like learning anymore because they're prepping for this test. And I just think it would be a shame to see that happen, especially in a district like this where there are so many bright kids. And I mean, I'm glad I'm leaving before the testing happens because I won't have to take it. I mean, just thinking about how much time, especially, I'm a big physics kid. I love the hands-on learning. This isn't hands-on learning, this is testing. It's not fun, you don't learn anything. It's upsetting to the kids that don't do well, and I think this district is already really good at picking out the kids that need help, that I don't think we need another test to do so. I just think that this time needs to be spent on learning. It takes away so much time, these delayed openings, or if it's taking away a day where kids aren't coming to school, even if you're not taking the test. I'm going to be missing a lot of time before taking AP tests, and that's important for me because I can have the opportunity to get college credit. And I know sophomores and juniors have this too, so to think about coming in and testing and testing and testing, where they're missing time to get to learn more so they can take more testing. It's way too much. And we just don't need it in this district.
Anyone else for public comment? to, in case you came in late, I mentioned at the beginning, we don't respond to public comment. We're going to have a board forum later where we will speak about park. So we're going to do our agenda, and there's another public forum at the end, and then we will be at board forum. So we are now up to item 10, which is approval of minutes. Somebody can make a motion. Second. Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Sparta?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mrs. Cassell?
Abstain on the
Mr. Fry? Mrs. Richmond? Mrs. Shaw? Mrs. Walter? Mrs. McHugh?
Yes. You're up to your reports. We have finance items 1 through 12. Well, 1 through 12, thank you. Items 1 through 12. Somebody make a motion, please. Elaine, thank you. Second. Karen, right? Did anyone have any questions or comments on the finance items?
I can just quickly go through what they are. Items 1 through 4 are usual recurring items, including disbursements, receipt of financial and treasurer's reports, budget, line item transfer, professional development expenses. Item 5 is approval of the field trip. Item 6 is routine approval of disposal of equipment and books. And item 7 is approval of receipt of tuition for 2 incoming students. Items 8 through 10 are approval of new services for students with existing placements. Item 11 is approval of the home instruction for a student. And item 12 is legally required approval of an item increasing our allocation of the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Act grant monies.
Thank you, Elaine. If there's no other questions, then the roll call, please.
Mrs. Sparta?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mrs. Cassell?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw? Mrs. Walker? Mrs. McHugh?
We're up to personnel. Items 1 through 27. Is anyone to make a motion?
item 11 is 1 through 27.
Someone make a second?
I think it's all pretty standard stuff. Are there any questions about any specific items? And then I will report out.
Okay.
Mrs. Swerner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray? Mrs. Cassell?
Yes.
Mrs. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Fry, excuse me.
She said yes also.
Sorry, Fry. Mrs. Richmond?
Yes.
Mrs. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Walter? Mrs. McHugh?
Yes.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you. All right, the Personnel Committee last met on Friday, January 16th, and I have 2 items to report out publicly. First of all, our initial negotiation session with the BTAA was snowed out, so it has been rescheduled to February 10th. Secondly, I'm happy to report that Mrs. Hudak would like to start a forensics program at the middle school. Mr. Yashevsky, who runs the very successful program at Ridge, is supportive of this. The committee recommends that at this point it remains self-funded, meaning parents will contribute for students who participate. And Mrs. Hudak is going to oversee this program as it begins. Any questions? That's it.
Thank you. We're up to policy. We have 1 item under policy. Someone like to make a motion? Karen? Second. Anyone have any questions about that item? Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Swerner?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mansell,
Yes.
Mr. Pratt,
Yes.
Mrs. Richmond, Mrs. Shaw,
Yes.
Mrs. Walters,
Yes.
Mrs. McCune.
Policy number, we discussed policy number 5111, and we just did not have information. We're going to gather some more information and readdress it at the next meeting. The next one was the one we just voted on. This is a catalyst for the trade group that facilitate clubs in the middle school by either teachers or parents. The committee recommends changes to this policy that allows parent volunteers to run sports and clubs where a teacher will not be interested to lead or advise that club. Oh, it's not? Sorry. Is that what it is?
Oh, this is better? Yes. I lost my notes.
Then we did discuss, Nick sent an email to Juan Torres, who's interim executive county superintendent, regarding this double testing and things we can do. And I believe based on the comments back, we were able to implement what you just said. Also, right now it's not addressing any new policies regarding and that's
I'm not asking for comment.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Clarity, that's all.
We have,
Well, if you'd like to hear the
we're going to.
We're going to talk about we cannot hear you. We like to listen. Can you hear me? No.
Your lights are red.
I'm red now, sorry.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Curriculum Committee is meeting next on February 13th, so I don't have a report tonight. Thank you.
We're up to advocacy. Borrow somebody else.
Oh, this is good.
because it's red.
All right, now, I have a really loud voice. So I don't know how you need it, but
This is good.
Is it working?
This one's red and it's working.
So, just try.
Is this one working?
Yes.
All right, before I said I had a really loud voice, you could ask my kids and my neighbors. The advocacy committee met on January 12th, and with the committee does meet with the PTO president, and we talked about ARC. And Mr. Mercurian also gave a superintendent update where he told the group that he met, he attended a county superintendent's meeting, and there too were more questions about PARC and what the actual reporting will look like when it actually comes back to the district. And Barry Erikson from the New Jersey Department of Education indicated she's going to try to put together a sample report so that superintendents can see what kind of feedback and data and report they will be getting back. Our budget hearings have been pushed back by a month. They used to take place in March, but will not take place in April board budget meeting. They were changed from March to April after the school board elections, which changed from April to November. Voters no longer voted on the budget. There will be a gifted and talented presentation at the February board budget meeting. And in May, there will be a STEM presentation. And we also talked about the
the split schedule that Mr. McCarran presented today. And our next meeting is February 12th.
Thank you, Karen. Did anyone have any more questions for Karen? Thank you. Do you have any liaison?
Okay, I have a report on the Berners Township Municipal Alliance and also the Community in Crisis, but they'll both be short. The Municipal Alliance had its first meeting of 2015 on January 6th, and we reviewed some stuff from 2014, but what I wanted to report on were some 2015 events and ideas. So, Municipal Alliance always participates in Charter Day, which is on May 16th, and the Twilight Challenge is on June 7th. That's an important fundraiser for the Municipal Alliance, so we hope to have a lot of participation from the community. Last year, the money raised at the Twilight Challenge was used to fund the American Drug and Alcohol Survey. As far as upcoming events, Lucy Forgione, who's the health officer in town, and Barbara Bush, who's a student assistance counselor at William Annan, have been discussing the idea of a youth panel. Ridge High School students would be the panelists, and they would be discussing community issues, such as the party scene in Berners Township and underage drinking. The audience would be parents, and the meeting would be held at the town hall. The target date is the end of March. So that's something that's in the works right now. In addition, the members of Ridge Against Alcohol and Drugs are focusing on parents this year in their campaign against underage drinking. So I wanted to mention that as well. And that's the Municipal Alliance. And then Community in Crisis is a group that's focusing on opiate addiction, both prescription pills and heroin. They had a town hall meeting on January 12th at Dolce in Basking Ridge. A representative from Governor Christie's office and also Assemblywoman Nancy Munoz attended. There was a panel consisting of Greg Benson, a specialist in treatment of adolescent and adult addiction, Tracy Baldassari, who's the school resource officer at William Annan, and Dr. Charles Dackers, who is a pain management physician with 15 years experience. And they talked about behavioral changes in a young person who is using drugs and drug paraphernalia. And one interesting point that they made is that today's drugs are much more potent and highly addictive than older drugs, and that teenage brains are extremely sensitive, and teens can become addicted to opiate within just a few days. Also, they had a speaker, his name is Robert Budsock, and he's president and CEO of Integrity House, a nonprofit rehab center in northern Secaucus. He stressed prevention, staying vigilant with your children, and getting rid of prescription medications that you no longer need.
And, we have to go back to Elaine for finance report. We skipped past by accident. Okay.
Thank you. I just want to report on our meeting. The Finance Committee met on January 22nd, and we had to discuss a few issues. One, good news for the district. On January 21st, Standard & Poor's raised our district's debt rating to AAA status. That's from AA+. And this was based on our strong financial performance and the growth in our reserves during a period of overall economic pressure and tax levy constraints, is what they said in doing that. This makes us one of only 3 other districts that are K-12 districts, Chatham, Milburn, and West Windsor, Plainsboro, that have this high rating. So we want to say that we really appreciate the work that Mr. McLaughlin and Mr. Martarian have put in to get us to this position, because it's going to lower our costs for borrowing in the future, and that's a great thing. We also discussed the refinancing of our 2007 bonds. It's $5.8 million worth of them. I'm not going to go into the details unless anyone really would like me to, but I will say that we're refinancing the bonds, and it's really kind of like refinancing your house and getting a lower interest rate. And we're under state law, we're required to do that when we will save 3% of the value of the bonds being refunded. It turns out that because of a change in the bond market, right now we're projecting to save approximately 8%. So that's going to be $539,000, give or take, over the remaining 15 years of the bonds. So it's an average annual savings of about $36,000. So that's great news as well. We also talked about the budget calendar. We talked about the steps that are going to go through on that. One of the big drivers of our cost increases is going to be health insurance. Right now, our health contract is out to bid, and we'll know soon by the 3rd week of February what kind of an increase we're going to be facing. We'll talk about that then. We also talked about other budget cost drivers for this year. Those are going to include the resurfacing of Lee Field, the potential recreation of the Wellness Center, which if people don't know is the student weight room at Ridge High School, and the overall HVAC project that we're doing. We're replacing all of our existing HVAC units in the units at Ridge that is 700, 900 wing that don't have it currently, and at Cedar Hill. This is going to be a phased project. We're going to be doing it at all the schools, except actually Mount Prospect. I think Mount Prospect actually has modern equipment, unlike the others. We also discussed priorities that we'd all like to see for the budget going forward, and committee members we're all going to have an opportunity as a full board to put in, think of ideas and things we'd like to make a priority. One of the things that we all discussed that we did think was a priority is improving the school security at our elementary schools, and that's something that is being done right now. Work is being done to evaluate that. I also know the state board also has just released a report not too long ago, which sort of gives best practices for improving school safety. So that's timely, and that's something that we're going to try to work on. Let's see, what else? We also heard in more detail about the Wellness Center and the field turf replacement. What the status of that is that the Wellness Center and turf projects are both going out to bid in February, and when we get the bids back, we can discuss them at later meetings, and we'll see what we can afford and what works for us. So, any questions?
We are now up to public forum on other agenda items. So, make sure you give us your name and address, please. We're still sticking in 3 minutes.
Hello? Laura Beck. I just had a quick question for you regarding the wellness center or the gym. I understand that for those students who are not on a school sport, the gym will not be accessible for them. And I just wondered if that was in fact valid. And if it is valid, then can we figure out a way that those students who are not on an in-school sports team can use that gym, maybe through a wellness club or a lifting club or whatever, workout club, because it's their school and they want to use the gym, and otherwise they have to go to the Y at, additional expense. Thank you.
Lisa Rembert, 10 Central Court. There's a lot of statements which I believe I know the answer to, but I'd like you to confirm that they are true. The district is not telling teachers to be silent on PARC. PARC results do not go on transcripts. Again, I know it to be true. I would like the board to confirm it so that they can hear it from you. PARC is not used for placement. It's not used to determine which students are gifted or talented. Okay? Also, I had asked before that our board disclose how much has been spent on PARC-related software and teaching prep materials. I was told it was a fair question back in December. I still haven't heard any responses to that. I think as parents, we need to know what besides $1 million on technology was spent. Okay, in addition, I'm talking, I know West Orange spent $250,000 on software, I'd like to know what Basking Ridge spent. Where is the money coming from in our budget? What are going to be the proposed cuts to pay for this unfunded mandate? And I would also ask the board to give teachers and administration clear information on PARC. In other words, they should let teachers know that the children have a right to refuse the test. And they should not be telling any of our students that they do not have the right. I have heard that repeatedly, and I'm angry. I've heard it both from my students and friends who have other students in our district. We want clear, honest information communicated to our students. So I'm asking for the board to step up. I know you're not in the schools, but I'm asking you to step up and speak clearly to our administrators, our teachers, and anyone who's involved with our children who are communicating with them, and confirm that they cannot tell the children there will be repercussions. And last question that I have is, we did a pilot test, and I've been told that PARC is going to be really fast coming back. I've yet to hear the district announce any results from the pilot test, and I'd like to know what they were and what those results were, or if they ever came back. I heard some districts just recently got them back. I don't know if Basking Ridge is one of those. I would like to know how the students did, what the test scores were, and I think every parent has a right to have that information as well. Thank you very much.
We've heard a lot of talk about PARC tonight, a lot of negative issues, and what was positive. I'd ask the board to allow Mr. Bidron, our guest here, to leave us to speak for a few minutes to educate us on what the merits of this test are, if you don't mind, and the board will defer some time. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else for public comment on non-agenda items?
No or yes?
Okay, at this point, if there's no one else coming up, I will close public forum on non-agenda items. Okay, at this point, I'm going to invite Mr. Bidron to come up here and sit. We're in an empty chair where Mr. Burton is not here tonight. And join us up here while we do board forum. Yeah, you might need to go to that end of the table. Okay.
Hi, good evening, everybody. As you know, I'm Mark Bidron. I'm the president of the New Jersey State Board of Education. I'm a volunteer. I am not a direct employee of the state. I don't work for the Department of Education. I just want to make that clear. I just want to tell everybody here and everybody in the audience, people who are teachers and parents concerned, that I believe that anyone who's in the education space is doing the most important work on the planet. And we are designing the future of our society by what we're doing in K-12 education. And I honor everyone here, and I honor the parents here that are concerned about the issues that I've heard tonight. I really do. I've been all over the state. I'm meeting with parents, and I'm happy to meet with you in groups, by yourself, in a separate forum. I'm doing that all over the state. I'm visiting as many districts as I can to get as much information as I can. I don't have all the answers. I really came here to listen. New Jersey is rated, depending who you listen to, 2 or 3 in the country in education. We have great educators in this state, and I have a very, very good dialogue with the NJDA. I meet with them every month. We discuss the challenges that are ahead of us. I recognize that this shift to PARC is very, very challenging and very stressful. I believe that if we all took a rewind rewind and went back 5 years, knowing what we know now, I think we would have designed the system a little differently. Unfortunately, we are where we are. And all I can say about, there are people who believe in PARC, and if after this meeting you can give me your contact information, I can give you the list of all the advocates of this, the Common Core and PARC that are out there, and all the college people that believe that this is really necessary, that we go this route. And I just want to give you an overview of, and I do believe there are, and I will get this for you if you need it, there are educators, people, PhDs that helped write the Common Core. Not everybody was that, but there are people that were highly educated that were part of this. So just when I was educated, and I went to Watchung Hill's school system through 6th grade, and even in independent schools, back in my day, it was really all about conveying information, right? It was all about content. Because information back in those days was very, very hard to get. You had to go to the library, you had to look at an encyclopedia. It was hard to get information. And the most important thing was that the information you needed to be college and career ready stayed the same every year. In the 40s and the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, stayed the same. So that's the way it was. Today, my 13-year-old daughter can get all the information she needs by pressing a button. It's not about content information as much as it is about problem solving, creative thinking, communication, collaboration, figuring out how to get together in diverse groups of people and coming out with an action moving forward. You can see many of us adults don't know how to do that. If you look around the United States these days, a lot of people can't figure that out because we haven't been educated to do that. You know, the old way of testing was put your answer down on a little bubble and you're done. That was it. That's the way we've all been tested up until this point. And so now moving to the fact that, you know, there's a test that's saying, I want the answer, I want to know how you got the answer, and I want to know how you think you can apply that answer to the real world is a huge challenge. I've talked to many students who said, this is a hard test. I get it. And we get the fact that, you know, it's an unfunded mandate. I get that. The issue is that right now, as I told people publicly, the train is out of the station. There's no going back to HESPA and NJS. That contract is done. We are looking at PARC now. Governor Christie has put together this commission, and we are looking at it to see if it's the right thing for New Jersey. It may not be. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that PARC is perfect, nor am I going to sit here and tell you that the Common Core is perfect. We are looking at these things right now, and I just want you to know that we are looking at these things, and it could change. As far as the high stakes portion of this, the woman who was talking about the teacher evaluation piece, I just hope everyone in the audience knows that the testing portion that applies to teacher evaluation is only in grades 4 through 8, teachers in grades 4 through 8, and for teachers who teach English and math. Everybody else has a different way of evaluation. It doesn't include that 10%. And believe me, the board, I can speak for the board. I cannot speak for the Department of Education. I've been told I can't do that by my commissioner. I do not speak for the department. I speak for the board. So that I have to be clear about that. We believe that teacher evaluation has multiple measures, right? There's many ways to evaluate a teacher. And we do not believe that it's going to go to 50% someday. We are happy that it went to 10, and we're going to see what that looks like. And so the other issue is that there's this myth out there that if I'm a teacher and one of my students has a terrible day testing, I could lose my job. It's really not that simple. I've called for Mrs. Ehrlichson to give the board a presentation on what an SGP actually is and how you calculate it. But it's hundreds of test scores, right? And they take the outliers out of the equation. So again, it does affect the teacher's evaluation, but you really need to look into it as to what it actually does. And then I'm just giving you, I think there are a lot of points of view to this whole conversation, right? There's the gentleman over there, there's the advocates, and then there's the people that feel that we're going down the wrong path. And I appreciate the entire conversation, I do. I want you to know that. But one of the things that I have great conversations with Wendell Steinhauer, who's the president of the NJEA, is that he would offer, and I think somebody else said, that you don't learn anything when you take a test. And I think that assuming that we learn nothing when we take a test, when I look back at some of the tests I took, whether it's the SAT or whatever it was, there were moments that I had a learning opportunity taking a test. So we just have to look at it, I think, in a broader sense. And again, I do share your concern, and we are, as a board, looking at this, and we're going to pay very, very close attention to the commission. And this is not a done deal. This is not, okay, it's part of it forever. We don't know that yet. So if after this meeting, any one of you parents would like to talk to me personally, get in a group and talk, after tonight, I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. And if you have specific questions about PARC, or Common Core, or anything to do with education that you cannot get an answer to, please come to me, and I will do my best to get you an answer. And I really appreciate the opportunity that you invited me to this meeting. And again, I'm sure I'm not answering all your questions and soothing all your fears, but believe me, we are aware of everything that's going on. We're aware of the public comment. I've been to every public session that the board's had. I've read thousands and thousands of letters personally, and listened to hundreds of people talk. So we do hear you. We understand your constitutional rights. We're not trying to deny that. The issue is for us that what we do as a board, the legislature makes the law, and then we have to develop regulations in concert with the State Department of Education, right? So back in 1980, the legislature made a law that said we have to test 11th graders and 8th graders. They made a law. And then back in 2001, No Child Left Behind came along, and it told all the states that they have to test 3rd grade through 8th grade plus high school in language, arts, and math. And they also said you have to test science 3 times a year, which we do in New Jersey in elementary, middle, and high school. So there are some laws out there that we are just having to implement. And so, we can talk about this, but it's a bigger conversation that we're going to have with our lawmakers if we want to take this to this this big conversation about are we really testing. So again, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I can talk about this for a really long time. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm up to listening to any other comments on the board.
Thank you very much. We're very grateful that you were willing to come and listen to all the parents and all the concerns. So we're going to have board forums. I don't know, I think Mr. Markarian has some questions he can answer that are easy ones. Maybe he'll do the easy ones first, and then we'll get into the rest of it. You want to try for the easy ones?
Sure. There's no easy ones.
That's the one about the wellness of
I'm just kidding.
That was easy.
Yeah, there was one, and just to be clear, the weight room that is going to bid in February is for everyone to use, all students during the school day, in gym classes, after school students, athletes, non-athletes, and so on. So the board is not looking to move forward on a project that only certain students have access to. So the first public comment was pretty much exclusively on PARC questions. So I'll see if I can pick off a few of these things. There was a lot of comment, not a lot of questions per se, but I'll see if I can't handle some of them. I think the 11,000, 10,000, 100,000 pound gorilla in the room of all the questions that I heard is related to the R word, otherwise known as refusal. you know, I can tell you this, okay? You know, it's hard, these meetings are, you know, you're looking for somebody talking about exchange and dialogue, but because we have an agenda of things to do, they don't always lend themselves to that, which is why we end up in the format that we do. So, you know, like Mr. Biedron, you know, maybe there's a time that we can collaborate to have an opportunity just to talk more candidly with parents about some of these issues. But, you know, there's a rock and a hard place. And that's where we are when it comes to the notion of refusal, because we can't be seen as a school district as facilitating test refusal. And to go down the road of doing that, I think, creates exposure for the board and the district that we're not sure what it might entail. And that makes it really difficult to make decisions when you're not sure what the consequences of those decisions might ultimately be, especially if some of those consequences could possibly be negative for the district. So it's difficult to come out and take any sort of position that could be seen as facilitating test refusal. I think, as Mr. Biedron pointed out, we're in a world right now where the statute says we're supposed to test the students. So that's what we're going to prepare to do. We're going to prepare to test the students. Certainly, we can't make anyone do anything, regardless of what any law says. I can't force a child to take a test, right? Any more than a police officer can force you to drive the speed limit down 78. They can't force you to do it. You choose to drive 85, you can drive 85. Now the question becomes, well, what about consequences? What's going to happen? Well, it's very difficult, because if a student were to refuse to take their psychology test on Chapter 5, we would talk to the student and say, well, what are you doing? I'm the teacher. You came to school. This is the curriculum. Today we have a test. You need to take the test. And if the student said, well, I refuse to take the test, the natural consequence would be they get a 0 on the test. And it hurts their grade. And of course, the teacher would be disappointed, probably would talk to the parent and say, I don't know what to tell you. The child refused to take the test. I can't give them a grade on it. They get a 0. Well, what do you do with a park test? You give a kid a 0 because they refuse to take the test? Well, these are some of the issues that we're trying to figure out. If I refuse to take the test, and the testing manual says, well, there's a special code that you get as a test refuser. Well, I want to make sure, how is that going to reflect the rest of the district? How's it going to reflect on the child? What's going to happen as consequences? And so we're working on trying to understand what those issues are before we come out and say, well, this is what we should do. Okay? So one of the things that I've been doing is sending people to training to try to get answers. And I've also asked the board attorney to be here tonight, to listen to your comments, so that we can try to develop a response for you. Because for some people that have actually written me a letter, there have been folks, as some people here alluded to, that have written a letter to principals and myself saying, you know, we refuse to have our child tested. Okay? So what is the response? Is the district going to be punitive in some way? Yeah. Well, if I say there's no consequence whatsoever, are we going to have hundreds and hundreds of people that say, I'm not going to take this test? Okay. Right. So if that were to happen, where is this district going to be if the state decides to say, wow, Berners Township decided it was okay to not test kids?